Picture yourself in a quiet, darkened room, the only sound the soft crackle of a fire in the distance. As you settle in, let your mind drift back over 1,000 years to the rolling hills and shadowed forests of Dark Age Britain, a time between the 5th and 10th centuries when the world was raw, uncertain, and shaped by the rhythm of survival. This is not a tale of kings or heroes, but of ordinary peasantsmen, women, and children whose lives were woven into the land itself. Their days were marked by toil, their nights by the flicker of a rushlight, and their world by a delicate balance between hope and hardship. There's no rush here, no call to action, just a gentle invitation to explore a distant time. Let the details wash over you, like the sound of wind through ancient oaks, as we uncover why life as a peasant in Dark Age Britain was a challenge few today could imagine. Close your eyes if you wish, and let this story carry you toward rest. Tonight we'll wander through 10 distinct facets of peasant life, each a window into a world of labor, community, and quiet resilience. From muddy fields to smoky huts, from the weight of obligation to the fleeting moments of joy, we'll move slowly, savoring the textures and sounds of a time long past. Let's begin by stepping into the daily life of a peasant, immersing ourselves in the rhythm that defined their existence. Imagine waking in a small wattle and daub hut, the air cool and heavy with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. It's early morning in a village in 7th century Wessex, and you're a churl, a free peasant, one of the countless souls who work the land. The year is roughly 650, though such dates mean little to you. Your world is the cycle of seasons, the needs of the land, and the demands of survival. The hut is simple. Its walls of woven branches plastered with mud, the roof thatched with straw that rustles in the wind. Your bed is a pallet of straw covered with a rough woolen blanket, its texture scratchy, but warm against the morning chill. Outside, the village stirs cows low softly, a rooster crows, and the faint clink of tools signals the start of another day. Your day begins at dawn, the sky a pale gray streaked with pink. You pull on a tunic of coarse wool, dyed with woad or madder to a muted blue or red, and lace up leather shoes worn thin from years of use. Breakfast is simple, a chunk of barley bread, perhaps soft with a sip of ale, the only drink safe enough to trust in a world where water often carries sickness. If the harvest was good, you might have a bit of cheese or a boiled egg, but such treats are rare. The meal is quick, eaten standing by the fire, its warmth a fleeting comfort before you step into the cold. Work is the heartbeat of your life. As a churl, you farm a small plot of land, part of which you owe to a local lord in exchange for protection. The fields stretch out beyond the village, their furrows carved by a wooden plow pulled by oxen. You guide the plow, your hands gripping the handles, the earth turning under the blade's weight. The soil is heavy, clinging to your shoes, its smell rich and loamy. Spring and autumn are for plowing and sowing, summer for tending crops, and harvest time is a race against rain and rot. The work is backbreaking, your muscles aching as you swing a sickle or haul sheaves of barley to the barn. Each task is part of a rhythm, a cycle that binds you to the land. If you're a woman, your work is no less demanding. You might spend the morning grinding grain into flour, your hands pressing a quern stone in a steady circular motion, the sound a soft grind that fills the hut. Or you're weaving wool on a loom, the threads rough against your fingers, creating cloth for tunics or blankets. The fire needs tending, the cows milking and the children watching, their small hands helping with simple tasks. Every moment is filled, yet there's a quiet pride in the work, in the knowledge that your labor keeps the family fed. Children, too, are part of this rhythm. By age 7, they're helping in the fields or gathering firewood, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. Education is rare, most learn through doing, their knowledge of planting or animal care passed down by watching and working. Danger is ever present. A cut from a tool could fester, a fall could break a bone, and medical care is limited to herbs and prayers. Yet the village is a community, and neighbors help when they can, sharing a meal or a tool, their voices a soft murmur in the evening air. Meals are a brief pause. Midday brings a simple lunch, perhaps a pottage of peas, leeks, and herbs cooked over the fire in an iron pot. The broth is thin but warm, its steam rising in the cool air. Supper is much the same, eaten as the sun sets, the family gathered around a low table. Conversation is practical talk of crops, weather, or the Lord's latest demands. The fire casts shadows on the walls, its crackle a constant companion. Ale, brewed from barley, is a staple, its taste bitter but safer than water from the nearby stream, which might carry the taint of illness. Leisure, when it comes, is simple. In the evening you might sit by the fire, carving a wooden spoon or mending a torn tunic. Someone might tell a story of gods like Woden or Thunner, or of ancestors who fought off raiders. The tales are familiar, their cadence soothing, like a lullaby that carries you toward sleep. On rare days, the village gathers for a feast, perhaps after a harvest, with music from a bone flute and dancing under the stars. The air smells of roasted meat and fresh bread, a rare treat that lingers in memory. Winter brings shorter days and colder nights, the hut drafty despite the fire. Summer offers warmth but no less work, with fields to weed and hay to cut. The seasons are a constant presence, shaping every task, every meal, every moment. As night falls, you lie on your pallet, the straw rustling beneath you, the world outside quiet save for the distant howl of a wolf. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, but for now, there's rest. Let this rhythm fade as we shift to the life of one peasant, whose story echoes the struggles of so many. Let your thoughts drift to a small village in Mercia, around the year 700, where the air carries the scent of freshly cut hay and the distant lowing of cattle. Here we meet Edric, a free peasant whose life is a quiet thread in the tapestry of Dark Age Britain. Imagine walking beside him, your feet sinking into the soft earth of a path worn by generations, as his story unfolds like the slow unrolling of a scroll. Edric's life is not marked by fame or fortune, but by the steady effort of survival, a reflection of the countless others who toiled beside him. Edric was born in 675 in a village nestled among the rolling hills of what is now the English Midlands. His father, Wulfric, was a churl like him, farming land granted by a local thane, a minor noble who offered protection in exchange for labor and a share of the harvest. His mother, Elfgifu, tended the home, her hands skilled at spinning wool and brewing ale. Life was tied to the land, its rhythms dictated by the sun and the seasons. Edric grew up learning to plow, to sow, and to reap, his small hands guiding oxen or carrying water from the stream. By age 10, Edric was working alongside his father, his body lean but strong from years of labor. The fields were a patchwork of barley, wheat, and rye, their green shoots a promise of survival. Work began at dawn and ended at dusk, the air filled with the scent of earth and sweat. Edric learned to read the sky clouds meant rain. A red sunset promised fair weather. His tools were simple: a wooden plow, a sickle, a flail for threshing grain. Each was worn smooth by use, their handles fitting his hands like an extension of his body. The work was hard, the soil stubborn, but there was a quiet satisfaction in seeing a field planted, its furrows neat and even. At 16, Edric married Sinbur, a girl from a neighboring village. The wedding was modest, held in the open air with the village gathered, the air rich with the smell of roasted pork and mead. Sinbur brought a small dowry, a goat, a loom, and a set of iron pots, items that would sustain their new household. They settled in a hut much like Edric's childhood home, its walls of wattle and daub, its floor of packed earth. Their life together was one of shared labor. Edric worked the fields, while Sinbur tended the garden, milked the cow, and wove cloth. Their first child, a daughter named Winflade, was born a year later, her cries a new sound in the quiet evenings. Life was not without hardship. The land owed to the Thane demanded a portion of their crops, barley, oats, or a pig each year. Taxes paid in kind were a constant burden, and a bad harvest could mean hunger. One winter, when Edric was 20, a frost killed the barley, leaving the family with little to eat but pottage and wild greens. The air in the hut was cold, the fire barely enough to keep them warm. Disease was another threat. Edric's younger brother succumbed to a fever, his passing marked by a simple burial in the village churchyard, the earth soft under a drizzle of rain. Yet there were moments of light. Edric took pride in his work, in the fields that yielded enough to feed his family and pay the Thane. On summer evenings, he and Sinbur would sit outside, the air warm and the stars bright, sharing stories of their childhoods or singing songs passed down through generations. The village was a community, and neighbors helped each other, sharing a plow, rebuilding a hut after a storm, or gathering for a feast after a successful harvest. The smell of bread baking or meat roasting was a rare joy, its warmth a reminder of what they worked for. As Edric aged, his body bore the marks of his labor, his hands calloused, his back stooped from years of plowing. By his 30s, he had 3 children, though one was lost to illness, a quiet sorrow that lingered in the hut's shadows. He taught his son, Elfric, to farm, passing down the knowledge of seeds and seasons. The rhythm of life continued, each day blending into the next, a cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting. When Edric died in his 40s, likely from exhaustion or illness, his life was unremarked by history, but his family carried on, their survival his legacy. As Edric's story fades, let your mind drift to the mysteries and traces of this world, to the fragments of the past that reveal the lives of those who came before. Imagine standing on a windswept hill in modern-day England, where archaeologists sift through the earth, unearthing the faint outlines of a dark age village. The year is now, but your mind lingers in the 7th century, where the air smelled of wood smoke and the village hummed with the quiet rhythm of peasant life. The Dark Ages left few written records, making archaeology a window into this lost world. Let's explore the culture, the mysteries, and the traces left behind, letting their stories settle gently in your thoughts like dust on an ancient hearth. Villages like Edric's were small, often just a dozen huts clustered around a central space. Excavations like those at West Stow in Suffolk reveal their shape. rectangular huts with sunken floors, their walls of wattle and daub, their roofs thatched with straw or reeds. The earth yields clues post holes where beams once stood, hearths blackened by years of fire, and fragments of pottery, their surfaces rough but decorated with simple patterns. These finds are like whispers, telling of lives lived in the shadow of a fading Roman world and an emerging Anglo-Saxon one. Life in these villages was communal, bound by necessity. The culture was oral, with stories and laws passed down by word of mouth. Imagine a winter evening, the village gathered in a larger hut, the air thick with the scent of burning logs. An elder tells tales of gods or heroes, their words weaving a shared history. Music was simple, a bone flute, a lyre made of wood and gut strings, its melodies haunting in the firelight. These gatherings were a ritual, a way to strengthen bonds in a world where survival depended on cooperation. Religion was a mix of old and new. Many clung to pagan beliefs, worshipping gods like Woden or Thunder in sacred groves, their trees heavy with offerings of cloth or food. Christianity was spreading, brought by missionaries like Augustine, and small churches, often just wooden structures, began to appear. Excavations uncover crosses carved from stone or bone, their surfaces worn smooth by touch. The clash of beliefs was quiet but profound, shaping how peasants understood their place in the world. A charm buried under a threshold, meant to ward off evil, speaks of a lingering faith in the old ways. Archaeology reveals the daily tools of peasant life. A broken sickle, its iron blade rusted but still sharp, tells of hours spent harvesting. A spindle whorl, carved from bone, hints at women spinning wool by the fire, their hands never idle. Pottery shards, some with traces of pottage or ale, show a diet that was simple but sustaining. Animal bones, cows, pigs, sheep show what was eaten, their marrow extracted to make every scrap count. These objects, mundane yet vital, are the fingerprints of a people who left little else behind. Mysteries abound in this world. Why were some villages abandoned, their huts left to decay? Archaeologists find signs of fire or sudden desertion, perhaps from raids or plague. The threat of violence was real. Viking raids began in the late 8th century, leaving villages burned and lives uprooted. Yet some mysteries are quieter. A hoard of silver coins buried under a floor, never reclaimed, suggests a hope for return that never came. A child's toy, a small wooden horse found in a pit, raises questions about the life it belonged to. These fragments invite us to wonder, to imagine the stories they hold. The culture of the village was one of resilience, shaped by the land and the seasons. Feasts marked the harvest or religious days, with tables laden with bread, cheese, and roasted meat, the air rich with the smell of mead. These moments were rare but cherished, a chance to laugh and sing, to forget the weight of daily toil. Yet even in joy, there was caution. Food was scarce, and winter loomed. The community was a lifeline, each family relying on the others, their lives interwoven like the threads of a woven cloth. As we leave the village's traces behind, let your mind drift to the world of the elite, the lords and thanes whose lives contrasted sharply with those of the peasants they ruled. Picture yourself standing before a great hall, its timber walls sturdy and its roof thatched high against the wind. The year is 700, and this is the home of a thane, a minor noble in Mercia, whose life stands in stark contrast to that of peasants like Edric. The air smells of polished wood and roasting meat, a world apart from the muddy huts of the village. Let's explore the lives of these elites, their routines, and the chasm that separated them from the peasants, letting their story unfold like a tapestry hung in a firelit hall. The Thane, let's call him Beorhtric, was a man of status, granted land by the king in exchange for loyalty and military service. His hall was the heart of his estate, a large structure where he lived with his family, retainers, and slaves. Inside, the air was warm, the walls hung with woven tapestries depicting battles or hunts. A long table stood at the center, laden with food-roasted venison, fresh bread, and bowls of fruit, their colors bright in the firelight. The smell of herbs and mead filled the room, a testament to Beorhtric's wealth and power. Beorhtric's day began later than a peasant's, perhaps at sunrise, when he rose from a bed draped with furs. His clothes were finer tunics of dyed wool, cloaks fastened with bronze brooch, their surfaces gleaming with intricate designs. Breakfast was hearty: bread, cheese, and ale, perhaps with honey or preserved fruit. Unlike Edric, Beorhtric did not work the fields himself. His land was farmed by ceorls and slaves, who owed him a portion of their crops or labor. His role was to oversee, to ensure the estate ran smoothly, and to serve the king when called. The Thane's life was one of privilege, but not ease. He was a warrior, trained to fight with sword and shield, his body strong from practice. When the king summoned, Beorhtric rode out with his men, their horses' hooves thundering on the earth. Raids from neighboring kingdoms or, later, Vikings were a constant threat, and his hall was fortified with a wooden palisade. Yet most days were spent managing his estate, settling disputes among villagers, collecting rents, or hosting other thanes, their laughter echoing as they shared mead and planned alliances. Women in the Thane's household, like Beorhtric's wife Edgifu, had their own roles. Edgifu managed the household, overseeing slaves who cooked, cleaned, and wove. Her clothes were finer than Sinbur's, her tunic embroidered with thread dyed in rich colors. She supervised the preparation of feasts, ensuring the table reflected her husband's status. Her children were educated, learning to read Latin or recite poetry, their lessons given by a monk or a visiting scholar. The air in the hall was rich with the scent of beeswax from candles, a luxury unknown in peasant huts. The contrast with peasant life was stark. Where Edric's family shared a single-room hut, Beorhtric's hall had separate spaces for sleeping, eating, and storage. Where Edric's meals were sparse, Beorhtric's table groaned with variety: meat, fish, even imported wine on special occasions. Yet both lived under the same uncertainties. A bad harvest could strain Beorhtric's wealth, just as it starved Edric's family. Disease spared no one, and the threat of war hung over both, though Beorhtric faced it with a sword, Edric with fear. Slaves, the lowest rung of society, bridged these worlds. They worked in Beorhtric's fields alongside ceorls, their lives harder than Edric's. Owned by the Thane, they had no freedom, their days filled with endless labor digging, hauling, or cleaning, the air heavy with the smell of sweat and earth. Their meals were scraps, their beds straw on the hall's floor. Yet even they shared in the community, their presence a reminder of the hierarchy that defined Dark Age life. The Thane's life was one of power but also responsibility. He was expected to protect his people, to uphold justice, and to serve the king. His wealth was a shield, but not an absolute one. His status depended on the land's yield and the king's favor. As we leave Beorhtric's hall, Let your thoughts drift to the tools and technologies that shaped the peasants' world, the simple inventions that sustained their daily toil. Imagine standing in a muddy field, the year 650, where the air smells of damp soil and the distant bleating of sheep carries on the breeze. In Dark Age Britain, technology was simple, shaped by hand and necessity, yet it was the backbone of peasant life. The tools and methods of the time were not the marvels of later centuries, but they were vital, each one a partner in the struggle to survive. Let's explore this world of wood, iron, and ingenuity, letting its quiet rhythm settle in your mind like the steady beat of a hammer. The plow was the cornerstone of peasant life, a wooden tool often tipped with an iron blade. Picture Edric guiding it through the earth, the oxen straining against their yoke, their breath steaming in the morning air. The plow was heavy, its design little changed from Roman times, but it turned the soil, creating furrows for barley or wheat. Its wood was worn smooth by hands, its blade dulled by stones, requiring constant sharpening. The act of plowing was slow, methodical, the earth yielding reluctantly under the blade's weight. Sickles and scythes were equally vital. A sickle, its curved iron blade sharp but prone to rust, was used to harvest crops, its handle fitting snugly in the hand. Edric would swing it in a steady arc, the stalks falling in neat piles, the air filled with the dry rustle of wheat. The scythe, longer and used for cutting hay, was a tool of summer, its blade gleaming in the sun. These tools were precious, often shared among neighbors, their loss a blow to the village's survival. In the home, tools were simpler but no less important. The quernstone, a pair of flat stones used to grind grain, was a woman's domain. Sinbir would turn the top stone, her hands steady, the grain crunching into coarse flour. The sound was rhythmic, almost hypnotic, filling the hut with a soft grind. The loom, made of wood and weighted with stones, turned wool into cloth, its threads stretched taut. Spinning was done with a drop spindle, a small tool that twirled wool into thread, its motion a constant in the lives of women and girls. Fire was both a tool and a necessity. Hearths were the heart of the hut, their flames used for cooking, warmth, and light. Managing a fire was an art. Too much wood wasted fuel. Too little left the hut cold. Rushlights made from reeds dipped in animal fat provided dim illumination, their smoky glow casting shadows on the walls. The smell of burning fat was constant, mingling with the scent of pottage or ale brewing in a clay pot. Iron pots and wooden spoons were the kitchen's tools, their surfaces worn from years of use. Water was another challenge. Streams and wells were the main sources, but they were often shared with animals, their purity uncertain. Wooden buckets, bound with iron hoops, carried water to the hut, their weight a burden on Sinbir's shoulders. In dry seasons, streams dwindled and every drop was precious. Ale, brewed from barley and flavored with herbs, was safer, its fermentation killing unseen threats. Brewing was a skill, its process a mix of science and tradition, the air rich with the yeasty smell of fermenting grain. Transport was basic, but functional. Ox carts, their wooden wheels creaking, carried crops to market or tribute to the Thane. Paths were muddy, often impassable in winter, and travel was slow. Boats used on rivers were simple, flat-bottomed and rowed by hand, their wood weathered by water. These technologies, though rudimentary, were the scaffolding of peasant life, each tool a link in the chain of survival. Yet these tools came with risks. A broken plow could halt planting, a dull sickle could slow the harvest. Fire, if mishandled, could burn a hut, its thatch catching quickly. Injuries were common. A slip of the sickle could cut deep, and with no doctors, healing relied on herbs and luck. The simplicity of these tools belied their importance, their absence a threat as real as famine or war. As we leave this world of wood and iron, let your mind drift to the customs and traditions that gave meaning to peasant life, binding them to their community and their gods. Picture yourself seated by a fire in a dark age village, the year 700, where the air is thick with the scent of burning oak and the soft murmur of voices. The night is dark, the stars hidden by clouds, but the glow of the fire offers comfort. For peasants like Adric and Sinbur, life was shaped by customs and traditions, rituals that marked the passage of time, the turning of seasons, and the bonds of community. These practices, rooted in both pagan and Christian beliefs, were a lifeline, a way to find meaning in a world of uncertainty. Let's wander through these rituals, letting their rhythm soothe your mind like a familiar song. The year revolved around the seasons, each with its own traditions. Spring was a time of renewal, marked by ceremonies to ensure a good planting. In pagan villages, peasants might gather in a sacred grove, offering bread or ale to the earth spirits, their voices rising in chants to Thunder or Eoster. The air was fresh, scented with new grass and wildflowers, and the ritual was a quiet plea for fertility. As Christianity spread, these rites blended with new ones. Plows were blessed by priests, their iron blades sprinkled with holy water, a symbol of hope for the harvest. Harvest was the greatest celebration, a time when the village came together. Imagine a feast in the open air, tables laden with barley bread, roasted pork, and bowls of pottage thick with peas and herbs. The air was rich with the smell of mead and laughter, the community united in gratitude. Dancing followed, simple steps to the tune of a flute or drum, the ground soft underfoot. Even in lean years, the feast was a moment of joy, a chance to forget the hunger that loomed in winter. Weddings were another ritual, binding families and strengthening the village. Edric and Sinbur's marriage was typical, a ceremony held outside the hut, with neighbors gathered to witness the vows. The bride wore a garland of flowers, their petals bright against her hair, and the groom offered a gift, perhaps a bronze ring or a carved wooden box. The feast that followed was modest but heartfelt, with ale flowing and stories told late into the night. The air carried the scent of roasted meat and the warmth of shared hopes for the couple's future. Funerals were somber but vital, a way to honor the dead and ease their passage. When a villager died, the body was washed and dressed in a clean tunic, laid out in the hut for a day of mourning. The burial was simple, in a shallow grave marked with a stone or wooden cross if Christian, or near a sacred tree if pagan. The air was heavy with the smell of earth and the quiet murmur of prayers or chants. Neighbors brought food, bread, cheese to share with the grieving family, a reminder of the community's strength. Religion shaped many customs, blending old and new. Pagan festivals, like the winter solstice, were times of fire and feasting, with logs burned to ward off the dark. Christian holidays like Easter brought new rituals, masses in wooden churches, their air scented with incense. Superstitions lingered in both worlds. A charm of herbs hung over a door to keep spirits at bay, or a coin buried under a hearth for luck. These beliefs were a comfort, a way to control a world where so much was uncertain. Daily rituals were simpler, but no less meaningful. Meals were a time to gather, even if the food was sparse. The act of breaking bread, of sharing a bowl of pottage, was a quiet bond, the fire's warmth a constant presence. Storytelling was another tradition, passed down by firelight, the tales of gods, heroes, or clever animals, weaving a shared history. The cadence of these stories, their words familiar, was a lullaby that eased the mind toward rest. These customs were the heartbeat of peasant life, a way to mark time and find solace. As we leave this world of ritual, let your thoughts drift to the food and sustenance that nourish these villagers, sustaining their bodies through the long days of toil. Imagine sitting at a low wooden table in a dark age hut, the year 650, where the fire casts a flickering glow and the air smells of simmering pottage and wood smoke. Food was the foundation of peasant life, a necessity that demanded constant effort and ingenuity. For villagers like Edric and Sinbur, meals were simple, shaped by the land and the seasons. Yet they were a source of comfort, a moment to pause in a life of labor. Let's explore the tastes and textures of their table, letting the details settle gently in your mind. The peasant diet was built on grain barley, wheat, and rye. Barley bread was the staple, its crust hard and its interior dense, baked on a flat stone by the fire. Sinbur would knead the dough, her hands dusted with flour, the air filled with the nutty scent of baking. The bread was coarse, often mixed with oats or peas to stretch the supply, and it was eaten at every meal, sometimes softened in ale or pottage. Pottage was the heart of the diet, a thick stew of vegetables, leeks, cabbage, onions, cooked in an iron pot over the fire. A scrap of pork or a bone might add flavor, but meat was rare, reserved for feasts or special days. Vegetables came from small gardens near the hut, their yield dependent on the weather. Peas, beans, and turnips were common, their earthy taste a contrast to the blandness of grain. Herbs like parsley or thyme, gathered from the wild, added flavor, their scent rising as the pottage simmered. In summer, wild greens, nettles, or dandelion were foraged, their bitterness soft by boiling. Fruit was a treat, gathered from hedgerows. Blackberries, sloes, or crab apples, their tartness a rare sweetness in a diet that lacked sugar. Meat was scarce for peasants. A pig, fattened on scraps, might be slaughtered in autumn, its meat salted or smoked to last the winter. The air in the hut would carry the rich smell of curing pork, a promise of sustenance in lean months. Chickens provided eggs, though these were often sold or given to the thane. Fish, caught in nearby streams, was a rare addition, its flesh grilled over the fire. Hunting was restricted. Deer and boar belonged to the lord, but a rabbit caught in a snare could be a quiet victory, its meat roasted until tender. Ale was the drink of choice, safer than water, and brewed by every household. Sinbur would steep barley in water, adding herbs like yarrow for flavor, the mixture fermenting in a clay vessel. The result was weak but nourishing, its taste earthy and slightly sour. Mead, made from honey, was a luxury, saved for feasts or offerings. Water, when drunk, came from wells or streams, its clarity a gamble. Illness from tainted water was a constant fear, its effects felt in the quiet absence of a family member. Food preparation was women's work, a task that filled the day. Grinding grain was arduous, the quernstones weight a strain on the arms. Cooking was done over an open fire, the heat uneven, the pots heavy. Preservation was critical. Grain was stored in clay-lined pits, vegetables in cool cellars, meat in salt or smoke. Waste was unthinkable. Every scrap was used, from bones for broth to stale bread for thickening pottage. The air in the hut was a blend of smoke, herbs, and the faint sweetness of stored apples, a reminder of the effort behind every meal. Meals were a communal act. The family gathered around the fire, sharing a single pot or loaf. Conversation was quiet talk of the day's work, the weather, or the then's demands. The act of eating was a pause, a moment of connection in a life of toil. Even in hunger, there was gratitude for what was on the table, each bite a small defiance against the uncertainties of the world. As we leave the peasant's table, let your mind drift to the challenges and dangers that shaped their lives, from the perils of the land to the threats that lingered in the shadows. Imagine walking through a dark age village at twilight, the year 700, where the air is cool and the distant howl of a wolf carries through the trees. Life for peasants like Edric and Sinbur was a constant struggle against forces beyond their control, weather, disease, violence, and the weight of obligation. These challenges were woven into the fabric of their days, their impact felt in the quiet moments of fear and loss. Let's explore these perils, letting their weight settle gently in your thoughts, like rain on a thatched roof. The land itself was a challenge. The soil was often poor, its nutrients leached by years of farming. A bad harvest caused by drought, flood, or frost could mean starvation. Imagine Edric standing in a field, the barley wilted under a relentless sun, his hands clenched in worry. Winter was the hardest, the air bitter and the food stores dwindling. Families rationed their grain, the pottage growing thinner each week. Hunger was a silent companion, its presence felt in the hollow eyes of children, or the weakness in a farmer's step. Disease was another threat, its reach swift and merciless. Without sanitation or medicine, even a small wound could fester, its heat spreading through the body. Fevers swept through villages, carried by fleas or tainted water. Imagine Sinbur tending to a child, her hands pressing a cloth soaked in herb-infused water, the air heavy with the scent of feverfew and worry. Smallpox, dysentery, or lung infections were common, their names unknown, but their effects devastating. Burial grounds grew, their stones a quiet record of loss. Violence was a constant shadow. Raids from neighboring tribes, or later, Vikings could destroy a village in hours. The air would fill with the smell of burning thatch and the cries of those fleeing. Edric, as a churl, might be called to fight, wielding a spear or an axe, his heart pounding as he faced warriors with better weapons. Even without raids, disputes between villages over land or livestock could turn deadly, though most were settled with words or compensation. The then's protection was a shield, but it came at the cost of crops and labor. Work itself was dangerous. Plowing could strain the body, leaving muscles torn or backs bent. A slip of the sickle could cut deep, and with no doctors, healing relied on herbs, prayers, or luck. Animals, too, posed risks. An ox could kick, a pig could bite. Fire was a daily necessity, but a constant threat. A stray spark could ignite a hut, its thatch catching quickly. The smell of smoke lingered in memory, a reminder of how fragile a home could be. The social order brought its own burdens. Peasants owed labor and crops to the thane, a debt that could never be fully paid. Failure to meet these obligations could mean punishment, fines, eviction, or worse. Slaves bound to the thane faced even harsher lives, their labor unending, their freedom a distant dream. For churls like Edric, freedom came with responsibility, the weight of supporting a family, and meeting the Lord's demands a constant pressure. Nature was both ally and enemy. Wolves prowled the forests, a threat to livestock and sometimes people. Storms could flood fields, winds could topple huts. The air carried the scent of rain or frost, each a signal of potential ruin. Yet peasants adapted, building their lives around these challenges. They shared tools, helped rebuild, and offered food to those in need. Resilience was their strength, a quiet defiance against a world that offered little mercy. As we leave this world of peril, let your thoughts drift to the education and learning that, though rare, offered a glimmer of hope for peasants seeking to understand their world. Imagine sitting in a small wooden church, the year 700, where the air smells of beeswax and old parchment. A monk stands before a group of children, his voice steady as he recites Latin prayers. In Dark Age Britain, education was a rare privilege reserved for the few, yet it held a quiet power, a spark of possibility in a world of toil. For peasants like Edric and Sinbur, knowledge was practical, learned through doing, but the spread of Christianity brought new opportunities, however limited. Let's explore this world of learning, letting its faint light settle in your mind. For most peasants, education was informal, passed down through work and tradition. Edric learned to farm by watching his father, his hands guiding the plow as he memorized the signs of the seasons, when to sow, when to reap. Sinbur taught her daughter to spin wool, her fingers showing the rhythm of the spindle. Children learned by doing. Boys helped in the fields, girls in the home, their knowledge shaped by necessity. Stories were another teacher, told by firelight, their tales of gods or ancestors, weaving lessons of courage and survival. Formal education was rare and tied to the church. Monasteries like those at Jarrow or Lindisfarne were centers of learning, but they were for monks or the children of the elite. In some villages, a priest or monk might teach a few boys to read and write, their lessons held in a church or hut. Picture a child tracing letters on a wax tablet, the air filled with the scratch of a stylus and the smell of damp stone. The curriculum was narrow Latin for prayers, the Bible for moral lessons, but it was a window to a wider world. Reading and writing were skills few peasants possessed. Runes, the angular script of the Anglo-Saxons, were sometimes carved into wood or stone, but they were used for charms or memorials, not daily life. Most knowledge was oral, memorized through repetition. A village elder might recite laws or genealogies, their voice a steady cadence in the evening air. Songs and riddles, passed down through generations, taught practical skills or moral truths, their rhythms a comfort in a world of uncertainty. For girls, education was even more limited. Sinbur's daughter might learn to weave or brew, but reading was rare, reserved for nuns or noblewomen. Yet women were keepers of knowledge too, passing down recipes for herbal remedies or the timing of planting. The air in the hut carried the scent of dried herbs, chamomile for fevers, yarrow for wounds, a testament to their practical wisdom. The elite, like Beatrix's children, had more access. A monk might teach them Latin, history, or scripture, preparing them for roles in the church or court. Books were precious, hand-copied on vellum, their pages smelling of leather and ink. Monasteries produced works like the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, their words a record of kings and battles, But these were far from the peasant's world. For Edric, a book was a mystery, its pages a glimpse of power he could not touch. Learning was not without challenges. Teachers were few, and resources were scarce. A single book could cost as much as a cow. Harsh winters or raids could disrupt lessons, and many children left school early to work. Yet the pursuit of knowledge was a quiet rebellion, a way to claim a piece of the world beyond the fields. A boy who learned to read might become a priest, escaping the plow. A girl who memorized remedies might save a life. These small victories were the seeds of change planted in the dark soil of the age. As we leave this world of learning, let your mind drift to the leisure and entertainment that offered peasants a moment of joy, a chance to rest in a life of toil. Picture yourself in a village clearing, the year 700, where the sun sets over fields of barley, and the air carries the sound of laughter and a bone flute's melody. For peasants, leisure was a rare gift, a moment stolen from the demands of work to find joy and connection. These moments, though simple, were the heartbeat of the community, a chance to breathe and dream. Let's wander through these pastimes, letting their warmth settle in your mind like the glow of a summer evening. Feasts were the highlight of village life, often tied to harvests or religious days. Imagine a table set in the open air, laden with bread, cheese, and roasted meat, the air rich with the smell of mead and wood smoke. The whole village gathered, their voices rising in song or story. A flute or lyre played, its notes weaving through the chatter, and children danced, their feet light on the grass. These gatherings were a celebration, a moment to forget hunger or cold, to share in the community's strength. Storytelling was a cherished pastime, done by firelight in the hut or hall. An elder might recount tales of gods like Woden, their battles echoing in the night, or stories of clever farmers outwitting spirits. The air was thick with the scent of burning logs, the words a familiar rhythm that lulled the listener. Riddles were another joy, their clever twists sparking laughter or debate. These stories were more than entertainment. They were a way to pass down history, to teach and to dream. Games were simple but joyful. Children played with wooden toys spinning tops, carved animals, or ran through the fields chasing each other in games of tag. Adults might wrestle or race, their shouts echoing across the village. Board games like unveils were played with stones or carved pieces, their rules a test of strategy. The air carried the sound of dice rolling or pebbles clicking, a small escape from the day's labor. Music and dance were woven into village life. A bone flute or a simple drum could transform a gathering, its rhythm inviting movement. Dances were communal, their steps learned from childhood, the ground soft underfoot. The air was alive with the sound of clapping and singing, the melodies old but never tired. Even in daily work, songs lightened the load. Women sang while spinning, men while harvesting, their voices blending with the wind. The natural world offered its own entertainment. In summer, families might walk to a river to swim or fish, the water cool against their skin. In autumn, children gathered nuts or berries, their hands stained with juice. These moments were fleeting but precious, a chance to feel the sun or the breeze, to connect with the land that sustained them. The air smelled of earth and water, a reminder of the world beyond the village. Religion brought its own rituals of joy. Pagan festivals like the solstice were times of fire and feasting, the air bright with the scent of burning herbs. Christian holidays like Christmas brought new traditions, prayers in the church, followed by a shared meal. These moments, whether pagan or Christian, were a chance to gather, to find meaning in the turning of the year. Leisure was a balance, a moment of light and a life of toil. Whether in the laughter of a feast or the quiet of a story, these moments were a reminder of what made life worth living. As we leave this world of joy, let your mind drift to our final reflection, a gentle closing that ties together the threads of peasant life. As the sounds of the dark age village fade, the crackle of the fire, the murmur of stories, the distant bleat of sheep, let your mind rest in the quiet that follows. We've wandered through the lives of peasants like Edric and Sinbur, from the muddy fields to the smoky huts, from the weight of hardship to the fleeting moments of joy. Their world was one of struggle, shaped by the land and the seasons. Yet it was also one of resilience, where community and tradition offered strength. Imagine yourself now in a soft, warm bed, the air still and the worries of their time far away. Their lives, though distant, remind us of the endurance that carries us through, the quiet victories that define us. Let the details slip away like leaves on a gentle stream. The fields, the firelight, the scent of bread and earth, they fade into the background, leaving only the calm of this moment. You've journeyed through a world that shaped the past, and now it's time to rest. Close your eyes, if you haven't already, and let the rhythm of history lull you into sleep, safe in the peace of now.